Greetings, boxing fans. Today we have boxer number 49 on the Pioneer list, a boxer known as the Dixie Kid. Aaron Brown was his real name. I want to tell you a story as I read through the newspaper articles. Multiple times during the teens there, I was coming across multiple names being referred to as the Dixie Kid's real name. A name commonly sent out was George White, and then a little bit later in a different newspaper, I read George Johnson. And I found this most unusual, as I'm like, these newspaper people in the time here are real journalists, is putting out what is an incorrect name is a rather odd thing to be happening. And then I stumbled across the answer in another newspaper article. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to give a glimpse into the real cleverness of the boxer known as the Dixie Kid. It appears that the Dixie Kid would go to the newspaper editors and indeed give them false aliases on purpose. The Dixie Kid would go in there and say he is a George White, and the reason for doing such things is that in many of the towns, people were possibly looking for one Aaron Brown for some type of arrest being made for various charges against him. So the Dixie Kid, being as clever as he was, would hold newspaper clippings in his belongings, and when he'd get harassed by the police, he would say, no, I'm not the guy you're looking for. Take a look at these newspaper clippings. I'm George White. I'm not Aaron Brown. I'm the boxer George White. And then the police would be completely baffled that they indeed had the wrong guy. And then Dixie Kid would slip out of town in the middle of the night and be none the wiser. It just shows you the complete cleverness that was the Dixie Kid, as he was an outlaw throughout the Wild West, wanted from town to town for various crimes. But just like the great outlaws of the Wild West, the Dixie Kid slipped right through the hands of multiple authorities, as the man was so clever that he planted false information on purpose to use to his advantage. The Dixie Kid was such a resourceful fighter that he was referred to as a black magic. And just as Joe Butler described in the previous video here, many tricks were actually invented by the Dixie Kid, such as catapulting his body off the top rope using his leverage to create more power. He also would hold on to the top rope with one arm and punch with the other, as he created himself a nice balance to try and hold himself up and get a little leverage in his shots. Many of these fighters here in the end of the top 60 here have certain deficiencies, and defense was not one of the Dixie Kid's deficiencies, as he was one of the premier fighters, and from my estimation on everything I'm reading here, he has a championship caliber defense, which would serve him quite well, as he started his ring career at 16 years old and developed quite the skills of being a defensive fighter. And as he got better and better, he became more and more dangerous. The Dixie Kid's deficiency would be in offense, as his power was lacking somewhat, but also somewhat surprising in times, as he had sufficient power for a welterweight. But the Dixie Kid is one of the few fighters here fighting at 145 pounds throughout his competitive rounds fought. There's some points when he got heavier later in his career at 160 pounds, which is about where he was maxing out as, but that was due to his older age and not being in a competitive shape that he was. As most of these all premier fights of his, he's all fighting at 145 pounds or less, as he was a true welterweight, and he had the luxury of coming up with the second wave of black fighters with many great fighters that were in the welterweight range. As we take a look through the Dixie Kid's career and see just how he did against some of the premier fighters of the time. The Dixie Kid, number 49 on the Pioneer list. Born in 1883, in December 22nd, 1883, he fought out of Los Angeles, California. And just like Los Angeles, the Dixie Kid was on fire. He made his debut in March of 1900, as many of the fighters launched the career at the turn of the century there of 1900. The Dixie Kid started at a beautiful time, just March of 1900, so he got to experience all of the prime fighters that were coming through the turn of the century there. He ended his career in the year 1920 at the age of 36. The Dixie Kid was not too competitive as his later teen years went by, as 1915 and on, as the Dixie Kid burned through all of his money, living a lavish lifestyle while in Europe, and had no savings whatsoever, and had abundant problems of income, as he was just boxing, trying to make himself any type of living, and unfortunately his lavish lifestyle cost him, as he died rather penniless, and like many of the fighters did, and that was his own fault, I guess. The biography of the Dixie Kid. The Dixie Kid was referred to as Black Magic, and also referred to as the best welterweight of the Pacific Coast, was one of the headlines that I read. His fighting style, he was described as a defensive fighter, fast on his feet. The competitive rounds boxed, I have it at 123 rounds. Now, certainly some of his matches were extremely competitive, but they weren't against top 60 opponents, such as Dave Hawley, which was a fantastic welterweight fighter, but he does not make the top 60, so they are not being included in the competitive rounds fought. My score for the Dixie Kid, 20, which is extremely similar to many of the fighters here, such as LeBlanc and Byers, and many of those fighters are right around the upper teens, and the Dixie Kid gets a score of 20. The level ups that the Dixie Kid had, he was 0 for 2, as he faced Joe Walcott, the Barbados Demon, twice, and lost both fights. His chief nemesis would be Jeff Clark. He fought Clark 3 times and had great success. His greatest achievement, this would be in the twilight of the Dixie Kid's career, in August of 1911, he put a beat down on George Carpientier, as he was close to a fading fighter, and beat one of the up-and-coming fighters in George Carpientier, and secured himself what would become known throughout France as a legend, and as everyone knew who he was after he beat Carpentier in France. And he was a local celebrity, as described. He was as popular as Charlie Chaplin was to movie patrons, was how the newspaper described it. His biggest miss, unfortunately, this is dreadful here, as his biggest misses would be not facing Jack Blackburn, who, as I stated in the previous video, is from his master class of 1883. They were born in the same year. How he did not face Jack Blackburn is beyond me. I did multiple searches trying to get an answer in the newspaper, and I couldn't find any matches being advertised as trying to get those two together. His second biggest miss would be Joe Gans. There is a newspaper article where his manager is trying to match the Dixie Kid with Joe Gans in 1903, which is a year prior to the Barbanos-Joe Walcott match of 1904. The Dixie Kid is extremely young at this point. Joe Gans would be very old, but very much I do believe that the Dixie Kid would have the ability to not only Blackburn and Joe Gans, but have a fair chance at winning, as his defense was just as supreme as either one of those fighters, and power would not be an issue, as both of those were pure welterweight fighters, and it would have made for a spectacular 20-round match if the Dixie Kid fought either Joe Blackburn or Joe Gans in anywhere in the year 1903, 04, 05 range. Now we're going to take a look at the Dixie Kid's simulation. This is trying to show his true potential, as he's be able to fight fighters from other age ranges here. His simulation wins are against George LeBlanc. He had a 15-round split decision win over boxer Jake Kilrain. He had a 15-round win over Frank Childs. He had a draw with George Old Chocolate Godfrey. And he had a narrow 15-round split decision win over Mysterious Billy Smith. The Dixie Kid had his limitations in simulation. He was ultra competitive, but some of his wins that he's getting there are just split decision wins that are very close matches, and that would likely be how he's actually winning some of these matches, as he was going to have to just gut out a very close win, as he's not going to steamroll over a lot of people here. But he had the ability to be able to, I think, compete with many boxers that are farther ahead of him in rankings. And finally, the newspaper depiction of the Dixie Kid. He's known as Fast Feet, very clever, an inventor of ring tactics, such as I stated there, and a defensive wonder was how the newspapers described him. And finally, we're going to take a quick look at the boxers born around the Dixie Kid. Okay, we take a look at the birth years master log here. Born in 1877, George Gardner. 1877, young Peter Jackson. 1878, Philadelphia, Jack O'Brien. 1878, Jack Johnson. 1879, Mike Schreck. 1879, Sandy Ferguson. 1879, Joe Jeanette. 1879, Jim Flynn. 1880, Kid Carter. 1880, Jem Driscoll. 1881, Jim Savage. 1881, Denver Ed Martin. 1881, Tommy Burns. 1881, Mike Donovan. 1881, Jess Willard. 1882, Larry Temple. 1882, Madeline Nelson. 1883, Hugo Kelly. 1883, Jack Blackburn. 1883, Bill Lang. 1883, Sam Langford. And finally, 1883, the Dixie Kid. What a class, that 1883. 1884, Carl Morris. 1884, Sam McVeigh. And 1884, Art Pelkey. That's as far up as the Pioneer class goes, as the cutoff there is a birth year 1885 is the start of the next generation. And let's see who the Dixie Kid fought along the lines there. So he fought Langford, which is in the 1883 class. He missed Blackburn, which stated as incredibly horrible. He missed Hugo Kelly, which also is in 1883. He fought Larry Temple in 1882. He missed Donovan, Burns, Jim Flynn. He fought George Cole from 1879. He fought Philadelphia Jack O'Brien from 1878, and he fought young Peter Jackson from 1877. So a couple of those guys Dixie Kid faced. Many of these guys he, in fact, missed, which would account for the Dixie Kid as some missed time for jail incarceration, and many of those fights that he could have potentially fought, such as a fight with Joe Gaines. He missed his opportunity by being in jail, and as the Dixie Kid, at the young age of 16 years old, got himself a lot of money real quick at a very young age, and developed some bad habits, and got himself in various troubles with the law at the young age of even under 20. As he was a boxing prodigy, and he started pretty early, and it's hard to expect anybody to have a great maturity when you got some rather substantial amounts of money coming in at the age of 16 and 17 years old. So we're not going to fault the Dixie Kid. Now we're going to take this moment to go through the Dixie Kid's competitive rounds fought, as we go through the bookmarks of his career here. The Dixie Kid's first competitive rounds fought is him jumping right off the cliff into the deep end and facing one of the premier fighters in the Barbados, Joe Walcott. This happens in April of 1904. The Dixie Kid, 20 years old. Joe Walcott, 31 years old. Now, the newspaper articles has this continually as Walcott protested the referee selection, as the original referee injured his hand in a horseshoeing accident. Walcott wanted the promoter to referee the bout, as he did not know the referee. Duck something was his name. And Walcott did not know if he was an honest man. And he repeatedly wanted to get a different referee as he was worried about something weird happening. And Walcott was very much on the keen because something very indeed was weird to be happening, as Walcott continually wasn't even going to fight because he didn't trust the referee. And repeatedly, the crowd was going nuts. They wanted to see the fight happening. It was getting stalled. And Walcott did everything within his power to try and get himself a different referee. And much to the credit of Walcott, he knew something was strange. It wasn't the fact that he specifically knew that referee to be an issue. It was the fact that he just did not know if that referee was honest, and he's fighting as the champion, and he didn't want any type of foul play happening. So in the 20th round, the referee claims foul on a kidney blow, which was perfectly legal, that Joe Walcott was doing throughout the match. The 20th round was the last round, and the referee had money bet against Joe Walcott, and as it produced much better odds betting against Walcott. And he claimed a foul to give himself a victory there. These are the notes. Walcott realized in a flash that a job had been pulled over on him. He turned upon the referee, Sullivan, with a curse and promptly knocked him down with his fist, as absolute chaos and pandemonium happened. Then there was a great howl. Men crowded into the ring. The referee snuck out of the ring as Walcott started to follow him murderously. As Walcott wanted him around his neck, much like Homer Simpson did to Bart. He wanted to choke him out. 2 or 3 men jumped on Walcott to hold him back. The Dixie Kid proclaimed, "Don't blame me. I didn't do it. I am not to blame. I had nothing to do with the situation." Walcott, I never saw a man keep up such a pace in the fight and show so little distress. He was fighting all the time and seemed to be almost as good a condition at the close of the fight in round 20 as in the beginning. The kid was knocked down or through the ropes several times. If you mix it with Walcott, Dixie, you are done, was the comments at the end of the very first round, being screamed by his corner. After the third round, Walcott sent him through the ropes. The champion was grinning and acting clownish. Dixie seemed to get frightened after this point, after he fell through the ropes. It seemed another marvel that Dixie could live so well through such a hammering. Walcott never seemed in danger, while Dixie was in danger all the time. The 16th round, Dixie was so dazed at the end of the 16th round that he went to the wrong corner. And Joe Walcott gamely showed him back to his corner. Round 20. Dixie Kid again went through the ropes. Dixie came back and landed his best blow, an uppercut, but Walcott seemed not bothered. The 20th and last round, Dixie falls to his knees out of exhaustion. Walcott helps him up. Shortly after, seeing that Dixie was in severe distress, the referee, Sullivan, Duck Sullivan was his name, the referee awards the fight to the Dixie Kid as he wants to win his bet. And from that point on, after this fight ended, the Dixie Kid did get a little prestige as being a rather fake champion because he had won the match, but none of the newspapers described him as a champion or any type of a title holder. But I mean, they kind of did, but not seriously. They didn't take it seriously because Walcott was robbed in the event. The referee was basically at the end of this match about to get murdered. He slithered through the ropes like a snake that he was, slithered down the aisle as Walcott was about ready to chase him and murder him. And Walcott was a extreme alpha male. He was not the type of guy you want to try and mess with, as he had a hot head and was very much going to probably murder the referee. No doubt about it. He would have did jail time and been happy with it, as he's not a guy you want to mess with. And a complete con job apparently was done by somebody on Walcott there, as he was extremely upset after the match. And at least the newspaper provided the fact that he was completely robbed. It's rather ridiculous that the Dixie Kid is actually declared the winner here, because as I stated in round 20, the Dixie Kid falls to his knees out of exhaustion, and Walcott helps him up. And then somehow after that point, the Dixie Kid is declared a winner when he's falling to his knees without even a blow being landed, out of pure exhaustion. And somehow ends up the winner in one of the most remote upside-down world events that could ever possibly happen. And Walcott probably really, at this point, never trusted a referee again, as I'm sure he never forgot the lessons that he learned, as he was very aware that this referee was an issue. And he made 40 minutes of protest before the fight even happened that he did not feel comfortable with this referee. Multiple paragraphs are going on as Walcott is saying, how about you, referee? How about you, referee? How about this guy, referee? How about him, referee? I don't trust this guy. But the reason this referee is refereeing is because he was a replacement, and he actually did referee the undercards of the fights. And the manager or the promoter said if he was good enough to do the undercards, then let's just let him referee the match. And it proved to be a very costly decision by Walcott to agree to the fight. And unfortunately, the real referee was injured in a horseshoeing accident, and this is the hand that Walcott got dealt. And it was very unfortunate, as he completely was robbed. So even though the Dixie Kid lost that match rather convincingly, we cannot fault him much there, for he's just the age of 20 years old. That's his first actual real competition that he's facing, and it's such a dramatic level up that expecting a completely green 20-year-old boxer to go up against one of the greatest pound-per-pound fighters of the era is a complete mismatch. It is the fact that he was referred to as a marble to be able to withstand such a punishment is the biggest silver lining that the Dixie Kid can take out of the events there. And it did somehow inadvertently get him some prestige as some type of a world welterweight champion, because he was declared the winner, but as we are much aware of, he did not even come close to beating Walcott. So in November of 1904, still at the age of 20, is his next competitive rounds match fought. This is a 6-round draw with Larry Temple. These are the notes. Temple was the aggressor the greater part of the time, but in the main, his efforts were stalled by the consummate generalship of the Dixie Kid. The second round, the Kid hit below the waterline. Temple was given time to rest up. Temple tried to land the one punch needful, but the Kid was entirely too elusive for poor Larry Temple. The results of the match: 6-round draw with Larry Temple. Temple was very much heavier than the Kid, and very much had far more power than the Dixie Kid. So, 6-round draw, November 1904. Now his next competitive rounds match, again, is a level up here, as he's facing Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. And most of these fighters, when they first encounter Jack O'Brien, are having a difficulty with him. This is in November 1904, the same year. O'Brien was all over the Dixie Kid, but did not appear to be able to put him out, or Jack O'Brien simply wasn't trying very hard to get a knockout. The results of the match: 6-round loss to Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. Finally, the very November 1904 was the Philadelphia Jack O'Brien bout. The very next month, December 25th, 1904, is against young Peter Jackson. And this is one of his longer bouts. It's a 15-round bout. And this is the only time that he faces young Peter Jackson, as Jackson was quite a bit older than him. The second round, young Peter hit Dixie with a wallop, which would put him over the ropes for a count. But the bell saved him. The third round, Jackson clinches a lot. The last 3 rounds, Jackson's punches lacked steam, as the second round, when he was full of vigor. Jackson was 10 pounds heavier than the Dixie Kid. At the end, both men were strong and showed little results from their endeavor. At infighting, Dixie was not so good of a punisher, but was none the less clever. The bout was a rather tame affair. Nearly all of Jackson's blows went wild. He had one blow to every 3 blows by the Dixie Kid. The results of the match was a 15-round draw. I have this as a even in the notes from the newspaper. 1 point is what he gets for that. The Dixie Kid was supposed to get married after the bout with young Peter Jackson, and Jackson was even commenting in the newspaper as why on earth he would plan a wedding on the same day he has a fight, because this is December 25th. And apparently his plans went awry, as the Dixie Kid never really did get married there, as later they discovered that the Dixie Kid was already married, probably on the record books, and it prevented him the chance to get remarried again, as the Dixie Kid has a life of turmoil with multiple problems. The very next month, January of 1905, a 15-round draw with the rematch with Larry Temple. Had Dixie possessed power as well as cleverness, he would have put Temple out in less than 8 rounds. Again, that's referring to some of the shortcomings that the Dixie Kid has right out of the newspaper here. The 8th round, Dixie broke his hand. Even then, with only one fighting hand, he outfought Temple to the finish. Temple was so badly hurt in the 5th round, he was hanging on. The 9th round, Temple scored a Dixie Kid knockdown for a 9 count. When the Dixie Kid, he rose, he showed how much he knew about boxing, as Temple until was not able to land a glove on him as he recovered from the jar of the knockdown. A bout the Dixie Kid appears to have won. So I gave him 3 points for this. The newspaper describes this as a bout the Dixie Kid appears to have won with a broken hand, which is absolutely amazing, as he seemed to have Larry Temple's number, and he gets 3 points for a win. Again, January 1905, he takes on Larry Temple's contemporary, George Cole. January 1905, George Cole. Dixie was handicapped by a bad right hand. As it's stated there, the Dixie Kid broke his hand in the Larry Temple fight, and this is in the very same month. I have no idea what on earth the Dixie Kid is attempting to fight with a broken hand. Cole had advantage in every round but the second, as George Cole was a fighter who completely beasted on welterweights, and in no way, shape, or form should a Dixie Kid be attempting to fight George Cole with a broken hand. I have no idea what he's thinking here. this is a 6-round loss. This is January 1905. At this point, the Dixie Kid and his wife go to jail for a 5-year period. They are brought up by what the newspapers describe as statutory offenses. That could mean anything as a statutory offense. It's just an offense that's under a statutory, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's anything lewd. It could be any number of events. They don't give details on what exactly the Dixie Kid is going to jail for, but he has the honors of not only going to jail, but also bringing his wife to jail. As we realize they were supposed to get married there, his supposed wife, in December 25th. By the end of January, the next month, his wife deeply regrets this relationship with Dixie Kid as she goes to jail for a 5-year period. Now, this is when the Dixie Kid loses some prime fighting things, as he's just getting started here, and this very much handicaps his career, and which is one of the reasons he's getting placed here a lot lower at number 49, because he's not got competitive rounds getting pushing up his value, and it's handicapping him severely, this missed time. And I do believe this is January 1905 that he goes to jail here. He did not go to jail for a 5-year period, as he comes back a lot sooner with apparently some good behavior. But I do believe the very next year, Joe Gans is fighting, I think in June 1906, he fights Mike Sullivan for welterweight title. And I do believe the Dixie Kid would have had every single opportunity to be a replacement for Mike Sullivan there. And in 1906, in June, the Dixie Kid versus Joe Gans could have very, very much happened. But unfortunately, the Dixie Kid was in jail because he was a bad boy, and this prevented the fight from coming off, and certainly cost him a chance at one of the great boxing legends, as Joe Gans versus the Dixie Kid would have very, very much been a fantastic fight, and I have no doubts in my mind that the Dixie Kid would outperform anything that Mike Sullivan did, as Mike Sullivan certainly was not, in hindsight, a top 60 fighter by any stretch of the imagination. So the Dixie Kid, as a replacement for Mike Sullivan, would have produced a fantastic match. And this also may be one of the reasons why the Dixie Kid is missing Blackburn, although the fight should have still happened, but he's missing all of 1905 almost, other than 1 month, and all of 1906. So he's missing his chance at multiple boxing legends, as he's wasting his time being incarcerated. Okay, so the Dixie Kid finally gets himself out of jail, and his next competitive rounds fought is a big gap in time. January 1905 was George Cole. His next competitive rounds fought is September 1908. At this point, the Dixie Kid's still not very old because he started so early. He's at the age of 24, and he fights 22-year-old Jeff Clark. September 1908, a 6-round win for the Dixie Kid over Jeff Clark. Nothing is in the newspaper at this point, as the Dixie Kid is a faded star temporarily, as he's not made newspaper headlines in a significant amount of time. His next competitive rounds match is in October 1908, the next month, against George Cole. 6-round loss. Again, no newspaper comments, as the Dixie Kid is not well known. I guess he is well known, but he's not being mentioned in the newspapers at this point. Finally, September 1909. The following year is he takes on Sam Langford. Both of these are 25 years old, as Langford is born in the same year as the Dixie Kid. And Sam Langford is certainly a big enough opponent that it's finally making the newspapers here. Results of the match: 5-round loss. RTD, retired between rounds. Langford punished the Dixie Kid at will. Langford punches to the kidneys were so powerful, several times the Dixie Kid went down from the punishment he received from Langford and the body blows. At the end of the 5th round, when it was over, his corner threw in the towel between rounds to try and save their fighter punishment, as Sam Langford was just cakewalking over the Dixie Kid here. No points for that. That was September 1909. November 1909, the Dixie Kid turns his luck around with Jeff Clark. This is their second meeting, an 8-round win over Jeff Clark. The notes for the match: the first round, Clark brings blood on Dixie's nose. The 3rd round, Dixie Kid went down, but he was up in a flash, in an instant. Clark seems to run out of steam at the round's end. So at the end of the 3rd round, Clark is running out of steam, and he's got an 8-round fight left ahead of him. The 8th round, Clark is down and saved by the bell. The Dixie Kid takes the last 2 rounds and gets himself a victory over Jeff Clark. November 1909, the same month, is the rematch, Jeff Clark. This would be their 3rd of the trilogy. November 1909, Jeff Clark, again, 8-round win. In the 4th round, Clark went down 4 times. He hit the canvas and manages to rise. The 1st round, Clark went down. Dixie's ammunition was completely exhausted after the 6th round, when a dismal look on his face signaled that he had abandoned all hope of scoring a knockout. The 7th round, Clark improved. In the 8th round, Clark finishes strong as he won the round. So, this match, Clark went down just 4 times there in the 4th round, and then he went down in the 1st round. So, Clark has got multiple knockdowns happening to him during this match, but he actually starts improving as the match goes on and finishes the last 2 rounds strong. But due to his enormous amount of knockdowns being happening, that the Dixie Kid is declared the winner with an 8-round win. That was November 1909. January 1910 is the Sam Langford match. This would be Sam Langford number 2. Dixie seemed afraid of Sam Langford. Dixie went down repeatedly, as it was easy work for Langford during the match. It was a hard loss for the Dixie Kid, as he absolutely was afraid of Langford and was not willing to fully engage with him, as he appeared afraid of Langford. The results of the match: 3-round loss by KO, as Langford had no problems with the Dixie Kid there. Okay, May 1910, Jimmy Clabby, 10-round loss with his next competitive rounds fought. The Dixie Kid was in poor condition for this bout, and he tired badly. After a few rounds, he was a sub for the match for Mike Sullivan, who refused to fight Clabby because of a poor attendance. So the Dixie Kid jumped in the ring, took on Jimmy Clabby, and really wasn't well trained for the bout, as he was a substitute, and decidedly loses to Jimmy Clabby because he was not in good condition, poor condition. Let's see here. July 1910. This is the Dixie Kid at 26 years old against George Cole. Once again, the tough middleweight George Cole. George Cole appeared fat and slow. Full 30 pounds overweight was George Cole. George Cole went down multiple times, and finally an uppercut finishes him off. 4-round KO by none other than the Dixie Kid over George Cole. Remarkable that he was able to knock out George Cole. I guess being fat, slow, and a full 30 pounds overweight is what it took for George Cole to get knocked out by the Dixie Kid, but it did happen. The Dixie Kid's last moment of glory in the sun happened in August of 1911, as he got himself a 5-round win by TKO over none other than George Carpientier, who, as we know, went on to fight Jack Dempsey. I searched for some details on this, as I very much wanted to read the details of the fight. But through the U.S. searches, the U.K. searches, nowhere, as the fight took place in France, is there any form of notes on this fight. As the only thing I can find is just states that the Dixie Kid delivered a beating to George Carpientier, which is a pretty amazing achievement, even though Carpientier was quite a bit younger than a Dixie Kid at this point. It's a win over a very substantial fighter. This earned him notoriety throughout France as he became as popular as Charlie Chaplin was to the movie patrons, and a bit of a celebrity throughout France. As this is the point when the Dixie Kid was in France, that he just lived a lavish lifestyle, burned through all of his career ring earnings, and set him up for being a rather broke individual for the rest of his career as he lived the lavish lifestyle. And the Dixie Kid went on to fight many more years as he started becoming overweight for him at 160 pounds. He was far removed from his prime. He fought until the age of 36 in the year 1920. This is where we pull the plug on the Dixie Kid's competitive rounds, as this was the end of his peak, the end of his prime, and many of these matches, he was a very faded fighter from that point on, as he was living the life up in France. And the Dixie Kid died at the age of, I think he was in his mid-50s, as he was penniless, poor, I think probably getting evicted from where he lived, as he jumped out a window as an attempt to try and end his life. As he kinds of troubles with income, and they had to have a fundraiser to save him from what was called the Potter's Fields, which would be an unmarked grave. And they had a fundraiser, and enough money was raised to produce himself a grave. And he got a marked grave as people realized that he indeed was a boxing legend when he died, and it saved him from the Potter's Field, as many people chipped in to give himself a proper marker, as the Dixie Kid lived a life of tremendous achievements and tremendous amounts of crime, cocaine addiction, troubles with the law, repeatedly sleeping past his points, and ended up in weird parts of the country, as in he slept in a boat and ended up in Sweden, I think it was. And he very much lived the life of an outlaw, and this unfortunately cost him many of his prime years of fighting, as he wasted away being incarcerated.